Welcome to the JD Power Travel and Hospitality Podcast. Today's episode is a very special one. This is our 60th episode. The pod has been running since 2018, and it is the longest running podcast at JD Power. So we're just thrilled to be celebrating that with you all today. I am joined today, as always, by our subject matter experts, Michael Taylor, Azari Jones, and Andrea Stokes. Welcome to the podcast, everyone.
We just don't know when to quit, do we?
Well, Andrea, we are going to start with you today. Looks like we have some interesting data about Q1 and hotel demand. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, thank you. So we sort of have wrapped up the spring travel season. I know we're kind of hitting the ground running with summer, but we can look back at kind of what's happened since the beginning of this year, 2024. And it does look like hotel demand has really slowed down. It's basically at this point through April pretty flat compared to 2023. It's the same time 2023. And this is based on kind of that rolling, 12-month data that STR CoStar provides to the industry. So very interesting. Prices have also price increases, I should say, have slowed down. But that doesn't mean, that it's sort of back to where it was before the pandemic. So prices are still high. But it's interesting to see that the spring demand really was flat for hotel rooms. Of course, this is, I'm referring to branded hotel rooms. But we could speculate on why that is. Maybe, prices for everything else when it comes to travel are high, especially airfare. And of course, if you're running into difficulty, booking a flight or finding a flight that is in your budget, you may just not take that trip at all. And that definitely kind of has that spillover effect on the hotel industry. So not sure if it's that or, just inflation in general, right? And consumers really are slowing down spending on, discretionary items like travel. So, yeah, we'll see what the summer portends. I know in our last podcast, we talked a little bit about what's going to happen this summer. But going into the summer, I just thought that was sort of a very interesting developments.
Definitely interesting and, timely too. We've got the hotel study, the JD Power Hotel Study publishing in July. So are we seeing any trends with that as far as changes in demand for maybe luxury hotels? We had talked before about how people were splurging a little bit for those trips for a while there, but has that changed at all now that we're seeing demand sort of flattening out in Q1, or is it too early to tell?
I think it's a little too early to tell with any kind of individual hotel segment. We do know that the room rates in luxury and upper upscale did kind of rise a lot faster. All prices rose after the pandemic, but the higher end segments, did rise a little bit faster. But yeah, so prices again, where they are, they're still high. They're still higher than they were before the pandemic. And inflation is definitely affecting the travel industry, both on the business operating side. Because of course hoteliers, they're paying more for supplies and for everything and labor, of course, but also on the consumer side everything is just more expensive. Gas is more expensive, right? Flying, like we talked about. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the summer plays out.
It'll definitely be interesting to see what happens with the trends this summer. Thank you so much, Andrea. Mike, I'm going to throw it over to you. We are talking about travel. We're talking about the summer. So, of course, airports are a big part of that conversation. Tell me a little bit about this new kid on the block, this Kansas City airport.
Yes, I tell our clients all the time that a new building doesn't solve all your problems, but it certainly does help. And to undertake the building of a new airport, there's a couple different ways you can do it. One is you can just add on to the current airport that you've got. That's usually the most cost-effective, economical way. That you run into a lot of compromises that way. Or you can build a brand new building all the way across on the other side of the airport and just reroute the traffic, which is what a lot of airports have done, including MCI out in Kansas City. So basically have a brand new airport facility. And of course, it's allowed them to rocket to the very top of the large category in our airport study in this third quarter. Now, the race is not over. This is only 3/4 of the way through, so there's plenty of race left to run here. But MCI is right up there with SNA, which is John Wayne Airport in Southern California, a former winner, by the way, are both tied for the category lead in the large category. And there are other categories, just to kind of cover these things off. Buffalo is leading in the medium category. They are also a former winner, followed very closely by Cincinnati CBG. And on the mega side, those are the really big airports. MSP has a slight lead on Detroit Metro, so both being former winners. So those are the kind of the ranking updates. And I was going to add, if you'd like, I can go into some of the little details of some of the things that we track
Absolutely. Yeah,
in
tell
the
me
airport.
what passengers are looking for, what travelers are looking for when they're in those airports.
Well, one of the things that you might not be surprised after all these podcasts we've done the last 2 years post pandemic, the hectic atmosphere is something that really has been affected. We ask what we call brand image questions on a 7-point scale. And we ask people whether they think the airport is hectic or calm. And large airports have a severe disadvantage there. They're really much, lower on the calm scale than the medium airports. Although everybody is doing very well as far as inconsistent and reliable, which, believe it or not, no one ever thinks that the air system is, or the air travel system is, that reliable. It actually is. We're usually on time performance is somewhere in the high 80s to 90%. And considering all the things that have to happen during a flight, that's pretty good. And also, we have fewer aircraft flying, so there's a lot less air traffic control problems that we used to see before the pandemic. So, believe it or not, people feel that the airport is a little bit more reliable than it has in past seasons, but it's a lot more hectic. And a couple other things that we do track that I think are of interesting. Some of the new questions that we've asked. We asked people if they used an EV charging station, and which is something that Andrea asks in her hotel study as well, but we stole from her and put it into our airport study as well. And it turns out it's a very big difference. And you might suspect this as well if you kind of think about the logistics of owning an electric vehicle. But 8% of the people that in our surveys at the mega airport level, those people using very large airports in usually very large cities, 8% of people said that they were used in EV. It dropped to 4% in a large category. And the smaller airports, what we call mediums, was only 1%. So it really does depend on where you're located. And that kind of makes sense when you're talking about who uses EVs and the range anxiety that you have. Because it certainly is a longer drive to Kansas City Airport than it is to Boston Airport for the vast majority of people using that particular airport. So one of the things that we also asked about that's new this year is what would you like to see in the airport? What are the things that you'd like the airport to do for you on the next trip? And as I talked about the congestion and the hectic and a lot of people being in the airport, more seating was the number one response. And that's true. I mean, one of the things we do talk about occasionally, I think, on this podcast is that if you're an airport and you've got a plane with 185 seats that pulls up to the gate, you're not going to have 185 seats in your airport for each of those particular aircraft because you'd very soon run out of space to put those seats in. But when you have a higher percentage of seats being filled on the aircraft, that means the seats on inside the airport get filled up faster. And it also doesn't help that, you've probably noticed this before, that usually when people are flying with luggage, they're sitting in one seat and their luggage is occupying the other one. So a lot of times the seating is taken up by
That's one of my
people and
biggest
their
pet
luggage.
peeves is
The
when
number two,
a chair has a
yeah,
suitcase in it.
yeah, one of mine too. Like you can put that right in front of you. It's no problem. There's plenty of space there. The number two item is a water bottle filling station for one simple reason. They take the water away from you as you go through TSA. And so having a water bottle filling station, and we probably mentioned this, I think since we've done 6 of these podcasts, I'm pretty sure we've mentioned this in the past, is that one of the things that we have found over the years that signals an airport is environmentally responsible is having a water bottle filling station to reduce the amount of plastics that is thrown away and preventing people from buying the number one selling SKU in an airport, which is a plastic bottle of water. And then in number 3 was a quiet area, which of course is related to the first topic we were talking about, is how hectic things are at the airport. And those are the 4 things that people overwhelmingly or 3 things people would overwhelmingly like to see in airports these days.
So, Mike, I've been looking at social media and I've been seeing an increased concern over like flight turbulence and aircraft. So, I guess my question is, is turbulence getting worse, or can we really blame aircrafts? What do you think that concern is?
No, the big swing factor here is people taking video on their phones while in flight. There has really been no atmospheric changes that would cause more turbulence at all, despite the headlines that global warming collects. There's really been nothing to the design of aircraft or wings, and especially that would contribute to a greater feeling of turbulence inside the aircraft. And no, it's just basically it makes the news because there's video more often now than there used to be in the past.
That's great. So it's safe to travel this summer. Like, don't be afraid. Get on the plane. It's a lot safer than any other form of travel. I think we've heard that before. So
yeah, that is actually still true.
Still true. Yeah.
Well, as always, very interesting insights from everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, Michael, Andrea, and Azari. We appreciate your time today. And thank you to our listeners for helping us stay 60 episodes strong. We are looking forward to seeing you in our 61st episode next month. Thank you for joining us.